Are you ready for pain? Are you ready for suffering? If the answer is yes, then you're ready.
Let's talk about reparations. In response to my video calling for reparations of black people, this guy responds, "This should have been done then. I didn't own slaves, and no one living was a slave." Let's address this. First of all, let's dismiss the asinine point that because there wasn't accountability then, there can't be accountability now. As long as the government is still around, accountability of that government is absolutely possible. The broader point is that this is not about reparations for people who are no longer alive. This is about your hatred for black people. Because if we really did want to focus on people who are still living, we can pay reparations of black people simply for the injustices committed against them during the civil rights era. And I'll give you one really good example. Houses. After World War II, there was a housing boom, and every American family wanted the American dream of a house. The Federal Housing Authority decided to give out loans to people, but only white people. They explicitly wrote into their contracts that these loans cannot go to black people for any reason whatsoever. As a result, white families were able to purchase homes, and black families were not. Home ownership is the #1 way to build generational wealth in America. Those homes that were then sold for about $10,000 are now worth about $500,000 or more. That's wealth and equity that allowed white families to start small businesses, pay for their kids' college tuition without student loans, or invest in new properties and make even more money. All things denied to black families altogether, and the results have been devastating. According to numerous studies, black median wealth has dropped by more than half in the last 40 years. Meanwhile, white wealth has increased 33%. But it gets even worse than this. The median black family today owns only $3,600, just 2% of the wealth of the median white family. And yeah, it gets even worse than this. At this rate, the median white wealth will be $174,000 by 2050, and the median black wealth will be only $600. Black wealth is projected to be 0 by 2082. This is what we mean by the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. But the scary part is this is not accidental, this is deliberate and systemic. This is why we also say that student debt is a racial justice issue. A study found that 2 decades after taking out their student loans, the median black borrower still owed 95% of their debt, whereas the median white borrower paid off 94% of their debt. Multiply this across generations and across tens of millions of students, and you see the black and white divide is becoming more and more stark every single day. And this is not some long ago conspiracy. This is contemporary reality. So if the argument really is that we can't pay reparations to slaves because nobody alive today is a slave, well, there are millions of black people alive today who are suffering from these white supremacist policies, denied equal justice because of the US government's contemporary actions. And if you really want to put a number on it, at a bare minimum, $500,000 reparations to every black person in America would be a good start. And that still does not absolve the US government from paying reparations for 400 years of slavery, genocide, and Jim Crow. Class dismissed.
Hey, stop. If you get holiday pay for Juneteenth and you're white, go ahead and donate that to a black person. Go find someone's GoFundMe. Go find a charity. Do it. Do it.
I am the victim. Don't you understand here? Look at me. Look at me being victimized.
Reparations. The definition is the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. And recently in papers released by researchers and economists Jonathan Welburn and Catherine Edwards, they found white Americans make 73% more than black Americans, are 2 times more likely to own their own home, hold 10 times more wealth, and are 28 times more likely to become millionaires. Welburn and Edwards' research was to focus on the racial wealth gap in America, and those are some of the numbers that they found. However, the solution they found in the research to address this massive wealth gap between black people and white people was a historic intervention with targeted wealth allocation policies known as reparations. They also concluded that the gap could be closed through broader policies that reduce overall wealth inequality in America. If it were up to you to close the racial wealth gap, what's the first policy you would implement or get rid of?
Okay, I don't care how anyone takes this, but I'm going to say it. I don't give a rat's ass that Maya Angelou is on a damn quarter. And I don't want Harriet on the $20 bill. I want reparations and respect. We accept the bare minimum every time, and this is why we don't get anything. What is Maya Angelou on a damn quarter going to do for us? What is Harriet on a $20 bill going to do for us? I'm pretty sure if Harriet was alive, she would say, give my people money. Give them their reparations. She don't want to be printed on no damn money. Every other race throughout history who were disrespected, taken against their will, used and abused, got their reparations, except black people. It's a shame that throughout these hundreds and centuries, we have not received $1. This is not including all the inventions, all the pain and suffering, all the trauma that is passed down. But no, we'll take one of our heroes on a damn dollar bill or a damn quarter. No, I want reparations. And until then, I don't care. And all the black people who say, oh, that's something we ain't gonna get. We ain't gonna get it. We ain't gonna get it. While me and other black people fight for this, just remind me to put your name on the list, so when we do get it, I'll take your half. And all the I know blacks, I'll take your half as well. I am sick of accepting the bare minimum, like Black History Month, like that whole month at least, black people should have fought for not being able to pay rent or go to work. But maybe I'm asking for too much, like, the older black generation say, oh, we gotta start one step at a time. I see no changes, and they will continue to give us the bare minimum until we demand more. But hey, who am I?
Why do black people deserve reparations for something they weren't alive for? That's a great question. Let's ask Sarah Beth what she thinks. This is Jebediah. Jebediah inherited over 100 acres of land, his father's South Carolina plantation in the late 1800s. He was able to use the money from that land to buy 100 more acres. In the mid-1950s, passed the land down to his son, Mark, who then sold the land for $5 million. Mark started a successful real estate company that he passed down to his son, Tim. Tim was able to take all of the wealth that he generated basically because he was just born. This is his daughter, Sarah Beth. Sarah Beth was able to go to the best schools, live in the best neighborhoods, and have the most wonderful extracurricular activities. He's now getting an engineering degree from Syracuse, already has jobs lined up on Wall Street, has never had to work a job. Are we really going to look Sarah Beth in her cold, dead eyes and tell her that she doesn't deserve the opportunities that's been afforded to her just because she wasn't born when the wealth is accumulated?
You guys believe in reparations?
Yes.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. 100%.
Because like black people been through a lot and everything, right? And then it trickles down and it's supposed to come right back up. It's supposed to be like a full circle, right?
In an ideal world.
Yeah. Like the water cycle type of thing,
yes.
Right? Yeah. So the question of the day is, you got $1.
If I didn't use my last cash.
Do you have Venmo, Apple Pay?
I do have $1.
You do?
I do have $1.
Thank you.
I mean, sorry, man. All I got is $5.
I think your necklaces.
Thank you.
Is your med cool?
Yeah.
All right, have a good day, man.
You
Thanks
too.
for getting back.
Family, this is huge reparations news. More than 70 Asian American groups urged President Joe Biden to create the Black Reparations Commission. So let's get deeper into this story. And family, a force of 76 Japanese American and Asian American organizations has demanded President Joe Biden create a reparations commission for black descendants of American slaves before the end of 2023. And y'all, they are making the argument that we paid Japanese Americans. Why in the world have we not paid black descendants of American slaves? Now, even Asian Americans are making that argument. Cut the check. And if you want to see more black empowerment content just like this, go over to hbcc.social and obt.social for black empowerment content that can't be censored.
Do you support reparations for American descendants of slaves? How can you possibly justify taking money through force taxation from someone today who was never a slaver, whose families were never slavers, who has never been involved in slavery in any way, and giving it to someone today who was never a slave?
Reparations for slavery are a very interesting subject. The proponents of reparations after that argument might say something like, well, these people, even though they weren't involved in slavery, still benefit from it today. And the people who were slaves still suffer from it today. And they'll say this is because of generational factors. So maybe if we went forward and wanted to do reparations, we could figure out how much reparations should be by looking at people who are descendants of slaves and looking at people who are descendants of not slaves and seeing where they differ. And of course, while doing so, accounting for as many confounding variables as possible. Actually, researchers did exactly this 2 decades ago. They looked at different factors like literacy and occupational income, and they found that within these outcomes, the descendants of slaves caught up to the descendants of free blacks within 2 generations. In other words, the average grandchild of a slave was not significantly worse off economically because their grandparent was a slave. And in a similar fashion, we can look at people who owned slaves and what happened to their descendants. So of course, after emancipation, these people had their wealth taken away from them, and many of them ended up much worse off than they were before. And researchers found that despite the fact these slaveholders experienced substantial wealth losses, their sons had completely recovered relative to similarly wealthy Southern households by 1900. So in a similar vein here, we don't see substantial generational impacts on wealth. And this is very consistent with all the evidence we have on generational wealth in America. We see when there's about a 10% increase in the wealth of the average white American, that's an increase of about 1.8% for their grandchildren. Which means, of course, most of that wealth is lost within 2 generations. Okay, so we can't really find individuals or even groups that are better or worse off because of slavery today. But what about America itself? After all, wasn't America built on slavery? And didn't slavery make America wealthy? No. From a purely economic lens, slavery is not good at all. One economist, Trayvon Logan, said that emancipation actually delivered the largest positive productivity shock in U.S. history. The estimated productivity gain was roughly 10 to 20% of gross domestic product. And we just have so much more evidence that slavery impedes development, slows down economic growth. Slavery negatively correlated with Human Development Index. One of the best studies about actually freeing labor is one from Russia, concerning the abolition of serfdom in 1861. Russia experienced huge productivity gains and overall improved living conditions and the economy. Slavery in America was so uneconomic that it depended largely on socializing the cost of upholding slavery. If you want to read more about this, I highly recommend checking out this article.
The city of San Francisco is now proposing a plan to give every black resident $5 million for slavery reparations. And this is the plan. For a family of 5, they will get $97,000 for the next 250 years. But a San Francisco official says that $5 million for every single black resident is simply not enough.